making a new system, which Samsung appears to be talking a bit more around maybe something Nintendo could be utilizing for the storage side of things. We're going to go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about an incredible find. I feel like on the PlayStation 3 side, one game that people thought was buried and would never be seen again. And then we're also talking about Yuzu responding to Nintendo because it looks like this thing is going to trial. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. It helps out a ton. And if you're new to the Smallwood channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early and ad-free. If you want to learn more about that, you can hit the join button down below this video. And we're going to start today with the Nintendo Switch officially turning 7 years old, which means as of today, we are in the 8th year for the Switch system. Now, of course, the system came out March 3rd, 2017. That happened over the weekend here, 7 years later. And thinking back on the system for where it started, even going back and looking at some of the older videos to where we are now, and it is a very impressive journey that we've seen unfold here. And one that I don't think anyone was expecting the system to go on and now hit over 140 million. It seems to be set up nicely to run down the PS2 and the DS, but a massive shift from 2016 for Nintendo coming off of the Wii U and merging their handheld and console markets together completely. But yeah, the Switch, I still think has something left in the tank here for this year, but clearly all eyes will be on Nintendo's next system whenever they unveil that, especially if it's halfway through this year. But I think we will see some releases coming out from Nintendo in the 8th year for the Switch that should be a lot of fun. Also, we had a bit of a scare happen over the last couple of days when it comes to Octopath Traveler. From the eShop. This is kind of happened, disappeared. Well, it seems to have to do with the publisher markings that were on the listing for it. As we can see, Gamatsu points out this for Wario64, who pointed the entire situation out online, saying that it's worth noting that the publisher changed from Nintendo to Square Enix. This happened in December of 2023, almost like maybe they have to change or shift licensing around. And I would expect Octopath Traveler to appear again, as it is still available on places like Xbox and PC through Steam. So it seems to be more or less just kind of paperwork in the background, making sure all the T's are crossed, I's are dotted, that sort of thing. So I wouldn't worry too much. It's just might be a little longer, like a week or so to make sure everything's set up again. I guess that also means that Square Enix is taking over completely as publisher then for Octopath Traveler. Of course, the Octopath Traveler 2 as well. And maybe this will be just a line of games to continue on with. I'm still unsure with how they feel of Octopath Traveler 2 and the sales there, but we get the sequel when we see a third one. That'll tell us all we need to know. Oh, and it appears we could be seeing some news around a Ghost of Tsushima PC port, which is something I still can't believe isn't out yet, but this was posted up over on X. This is from Special Nick saying, I'm hearing that we might be getting something about Ghost of Tsushima PC port pretty soon, maybe around the 5th. So this week, I guess tomorrow, obviously being the 5th, but technically could be any time this week. And this is sort of the way I would expect Sony to announce Ghost of Tsushima going to PC. Just through a post on the PlayStation blog, doesn't even need to be part of the state of play, nothing like that. They just sort of throw out there, hey, Ghost of Tsushima going to Steam in a month or two, and here's all the different features for ultra widescreen support. You can change the resolution all the way up to, who knows, I mean, like, 4K, 8K. You can do all these fun little details as long as your, of course, computer can handle it. But I think that'd be a good game for the PC, and would probably, I think, sell pretty well there, especially with the multiplayer component just kind of packaged in all at once. So I guess keep your eyes out. We'll most likely see a Ghost of Tsushima announcement here pretty soon. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the technology that's actually come up in recent conversation across the internet for Nintendo when it comes to their next generation device and the storage side of things, specifically expandable storage, because the internal storage for the next system, while they could push for 256 gigabytes or 512 gigabytes, would be incredible on its own, considering the most we've seen Nintendo pack in for a system at this time is 64 gigabytes, but they would be able to control the speed of whatever storage medium they're using internally for the system. When it comes down to the expandable side of things, as right now we're using SD cards for the Switch, and actually SD cards that are starting to fall behind a bit when it comes to the speed side of things. They're still using UHS-1 for the current Switch with that SD card slot. But it does appear we're starting to see more and more movement when it comes to the SD card side with speed and accessibility. And this latest one comes from Samsung, and this was actually right up on Ars Technica, where they say Samsung says that they're sampling its first micro SD cards that support the SD Express standard, which will allow them to hit sustained or read speeds of as much as 800 megabytes per second, which they mention here. It's roughly 10 times the speed as what the average card tends to be for even something like the Switch at 80 to 90 megabytes. You can, of course, get even faster SD cards now, around 250 megabytes per second for the UHS-2 compatible cards. But those tend to be used for people who are more or less recording maybe 4K, 6K, 8K footage, right? Like, you can get some pretty expensive SD cards now that are fairly fast, but they're not really used on the consumer level. The SD Express standard allows SD cards to take advantage of a single lane's worth of PCIe bandwidth, boosting their theoretical speeds well beyond the 104 megabytes cap of the UHS-1 standard and the 312 megabytes cap of UHS-2. There is UHS-3, as they point out, but it's not really used at all right now. And my thing with this is, while, again, Nintendo can control the storage inside of the current Switch, and maybe the 2, whatever you want to call it, the expandable storage is kind of left up to the consumer to pick the right SD card. And we're already dealing with fake SD cards, counterfeit ones that pop up on Amazon, AliExpress, which you name it there, right? But in this case, it could get to a point where Nintendo asks people to buy certain speeds or certain class SD cards. However, like UHS-1 SD card would still work in a slot like that. It would just default backwards that speed. The reason this is kind of a big thing right now and being focused in on is Samsung appears to be trying it out with 256 gigabyte cards, which will still be fairly expensive because SD Express has been around for 3 or 4 years. It's just not really seen wide adoption at all compared to UHS, which is pretty much the leading slot that you see in most devices now. I have seen some people bring up the idea that maybe Nintendo would, it sounds funny, but have you install games just to the internal storage, whether it's off of the cartridge or you store them on your SD card, but then have to move them to it, kind of like what we see the PS5 and the Xbox Series do now. And again, that's just controlled speed because we know Nintendo, according to reports, is working to eliminate load screens from many of their games. I mean, we heard about The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. That apparently was shown off in some capacity at Gamescom, where the load screens were just eliminated. And I think that's great because I do notice the load screens more and more now when I play on the Switch versus PS5 and Xbox Series system. And while they're still somewhat present there, definitely significantly less than it was last generation those mechanical hard drives. So while the graphics side of things is really pulling most of the conversation around Nintendo's next device, I do think the idea of eliminating load screens, which can work around different changes for game design, but then also how Nintendo approaches expandable storage. Can they still keep it as convenient as it is now, which is SD cards all over Amazon? That's an interesting thing for them to figure out. But let me know what you think about this and how Nintendo maybe could approach the idea of expandable storage, but also really fast storage that can work to eliminate some of these load screens. Next up, let's talk about Yuzu, who has now responded to Nintendo's court filing. And this, of course, the Switch emulator that's extremely popular. Nintendo going after it in a very different way, really trying to link this emulator to piracy and also pointing out that they get quite a bit of money from the community through Patreon. And then, also Breath of the Wild downloaded over 1 million times. There was 1 million other requests to download that didn't go through. So this was something Nintendo was pushing really hard with, and something they've researched quite a bit with full-on Discord messages, the whole deal from the team behind Yuzu. Well, now we can see this is posted up. It was screen capped here by PC Focus and also written up by Eurogamer, saying in its response, Tropic Haze has confirmed, I guess Tropic Haze is the company, Tropic Haze LLC, behind Yuzu, saying it has retained the services of an attorney from Pierce Atwood LLP and committed to responding to the motion within 60 days of the date the paperwork was filed, which was February 27th. So we'll be hearing from them. Latest would be really 3rd or 4th week in April, which I feel like they'll probably have that done before that, probably we'll hear something by the end of March, beginning of April. But it just this kind of looks like they're going to court. I mean, I guess they can come back and have some sort of response that they're going to work to settle or figure this out outside of the courtroom. But Nintendo, at least in their filing, seems pretty adamant about going to court with a jury, the whole thing, which would also present, I feel like, quite a bit of discovery that could be kind of interesting. So I don't know, maybe it would be just interesting in general to see them go to court with discovery and finding out all kinds of new information, maybe behind the scenes for Nintendo, and then also Yuzu's development. A lot of it would probably be redacted, as we saw with Microsoft and the FTC, but then we also saw stuff just kind of leak out, and that seems to consistently happen when some of these big companies get involved, whether it's Epic and Apple or Microsoft and Sony. It seems to be a consistent thing. So most likely Nintendo would probably leak something out there. It could be game budgets, could be development secrets, who knows. But certainly something we should be keeping an eye on to see how all of this continues along, as there are still many more steps in front of us before we even get to the courtroom. So we'll see how Yuzu decides to officially respond here in the next 2 months or so, going into April. Next up, let's talk about an incredible retro find. Now, this was something that just appeared on Reddit a few days ago, and it has to do with a PlayStation 3 development kit that was spotted on eBay. Now, according to the original poster, it cost them just over $500 to get a hold of this thing, and it was a single screenshot that appeared to catch their eye and have them go forward with that purchase. Now, the Reddit post, which you can see here, is titled, "Is This a Prototype Game?" And you can see the image. It says Time Splitters 4 on it. What? So people in of course, the comments were kind of losing their mind for a minute, because what we could have here is Time Splitters 4, the game that was in development, was this 2000, I think we heard about it like 2008 from Free Radical, and apparently they were working on Time Splitters 4 before they got bought out by Crytek, who then I believe turned them into Crytek UK, and unfortunately from there it was put on hold, and then eventually it just wasn't in development anymore. But of course, you can have development builds out there floating around, but not necessarily appearing on eBay, where you could technically buy it and then dump the prototype. Well, from this point, the person reached out to the seller and they had them boot up the game, and it appears to boot. Now, we're still trying to figure out if this is more than like 1 or 2 levels or something, as if there was some discussion that it was kind of a small chunk of the game. But the fact that it's just sort of there and it could be dumped online, and maybe you could technically then launch it on your own custom or custom firmware enabled PlayStation 3 is incredible. This is something I would love to check in on, and the person who did buy it seems interested in dumping it and just kind of putting it on archive.org. At least that's the vibe they're putting off now. We'll see what happens when they get it and realize potentially how rare the thing is that's in front of them. I'd like to think that they'll just kind of put it out there. And while this could just be a level or maybe even half of a level, it's still an interesting look into something we have only heard about through developer interviews, that sort of thing. And seeing it actually exist in some capacity is pretty cool for Time Splitters fans. So here's hoping that it does actually get put online and we can try to fire it out, because that might be a fun, quick little video to do here to see what apparently Time Splitters 4 could have been. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Sony and a patent that's recently popped up with them apparently working a bit more on the haptic feedback that's in the DualSense controller. And we know these companies are constantly working behind the scenes with research and development, and many times they're working on the system, but they also work on the controller itself and maybe coming up with different ways to be more immersive. And in this case, it seems like Sony has an idea around not only the advanced haptic feedback, but also the weight of the controller. Well, this is posted up, and it's an excerpt from the patent that was pretty recent. It was filed in August 2023, and then it was published just a few days ago. But it says a controller for a multimedia entertainment system is provided. The controller comprises a weighted component connected to the controller, wherein the weighted component is rotationally movable relative to the controller. The controller is configured to rotate the weighted component from a start position to an end position to shift the center of the mass of the controller in response to a trigger event, wherein the weighted component stops moving at the end position. This movement of the weighted component provides directional haptic feedback to a user of the controller. So if you picture the kind of the older Rumble motors that we had, Xbox 360, PS3 days, PS4 days. Of course, now with the advanced haptic feedback we have with the Switch and the PlayStation 3, they look way different, like little bricks, whereas before it was a counterbalanced weight that would basically oscillate when it spun up really, really fast. That's how you have that kind of the vibration that they put through the controller. In this case, though, it sounds like they would have something similar, but it would be able to sort of stop on a dime wherever they want it to. So it would still be kind of this heavy, bulky looking thing, but if they're able to maybe have that in the center of the controller and can move it from one side or the other, they can have one end be a little heavier than the other at different times. And you're climbing up on a ladder and your weight shifting back and forth, and you can quickly move it around, or steering technically in a game with the controller. They can have it so that you're getting a bit more weight with the steering wheel fighting against you. I mean, that is at least an interesting idea here. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to come out and we have it in the next DualSense or PlayStation controller, but it is kind of fun to see some of the ideas they come up with behind the scene and ones they deem important enough to put through a filing like this with a patent. And before we go to the comments of the day, let's take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, if you had a Switch, what year did you get it? So 2017, I figured would be the winner here, but even beyond that, 2018, 2019, 2020, then look at 2021 or more recently, which technically could be because of like the Switch OLED, or maybe you're just your older Switch going bad just over time, right? You want to replace it. Still though, there are quite a few people who voted here, 11% saying that they got theirs in the last 2 or 3 years or so. And for some who are, if you're just now, even the last year, getting into sort of the Switch ecosystem, there's so many games to play right now, because the library for the Switch, when it's all said and done, might be the best library in gaming ever. And that even includes the PS2, which was an incredible library, sure, but the Switch has so many games from Nintendo's past, so many franchises that are represented, as well as actually quite a bit of third-party stuff. It's hard to go wrong with the system, to be honest. There's something for everyone. Now, I will admit, they are missing some of the sports games. I'm thinking of Madden as an example, or a good wrestling game after what happened with 2K18. But barring a few little holes here and there, it's pretty complete. So, yeah, if you got it recently, I get why you might be like, oh, this is great. I'm not that interested in the next system yet, until obviously you show it. But if you got yours 2017, you might be looking at like, I kind of want to get something new that still plays the same games, but I don't want to buy the OLED yet, because that means the new system will get announced right away. But yeah, it's what a run for this system after 7 years now. In the 8th year, it's quite the library. And we'll finish up with the comments of the day. We'll start with this one here. This is posted up from Elmash saying, we need better offline games with split screen and no Denuvo DRM. I'm surprised Denuvo still gets pushed so much with some of the detrimental side effects it has on game performance, but these companies have to have some sort of data that shows that it does work for them, at least in the first week before it gets cracked. As for split screen stuff, I do feel like back in the day, and I'm really thinking of like PS2, GameCube, Xbox generation, I feel like we looked at most games that had multiplayer in it and was like, oh yeah, obviously a split screen. Yeah, that's going to be a thing, clearly. But now we look at the back of the box and it's like, 1 to 4 players multiplayer. We think immediately, at least I do, that it's just online. There's no split screen. It's unfortunately kind of a lost feature to time. And I don't know if that's just because the digital age has become more and more prevalent and people don't get together as much. But back then, you want to play games, you went over to a friend's house. Now it's kind of so better on split screen. And we'll finish up with a comment from the members video. This right here is from Loon Doom. Says, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has been living up to my expectations and more so far. The game is excellent. If only I didn't have work so I could spend more time with it. Those are the best kind of games, by the way, is when you're thinking about the game, when you're not playing it, whether you're at work or just doing chores or out and about doing stuff, you're like, man, that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I want to get back so I can play that. Or I want to finish some side quests and you got to go over your mind, right? Well, Rebirth, I'm now 20 hours in, and the game keeps getting better and better and better. I have a blast with this game. Early on, I was like, okay, I see some flaws, but they've been kind of covered up with some of the more impressive things, I'll say, that it's that it's doing. So yeah, I also have that feeling where I'm like, yeah, I want to go play Final Fantasy VII Rebirth now. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Was Yuzu responding to Nintendo officially, and it looks like we can expect something else from them about going to trial in the next 2 months. Then also about Nintendo dealing with maybe different types of SD cards, going to next generation to eliminate load times, and Time Splitters 4 being found on a PlayStation 3 dev kit. Is that something you'd want to check out? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.
NYX Professional Makeup, baby. #1 lip gloss brand in America.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Spawncast, episode 357. OJ just made it in right as we went live. Shout out to OJ. I just got it there. Almost like go live and if you get there, great. You just made it in like that. The elevator was closing, like launched between the doors.
I saw that you. I thought I was looking on Discord. I'm like, wait a minute, we're probably not on Discord.
Evan's out sick tonight, unfortunately. So we went to StreamYard, changing it up a little bit. But OJ, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Can't complain. Spawncast pre-show was lit. It was a lot of fun. Shout out to everybody that came through. A lot of people from the Spawncast and other channel, all you guys' channels. So thank you guys for dropping by. Remember, Spawncast pre-show on about usually an hour and a half or an hour before the Spawncast. You guys can drop by the Players channel.
Yep, we got Josie here after debuting. What was it? Boomer versus Zoomer.
Oh yeah, yep, it was good.
And BJ, come on, man.
It was
I'm pretty insane at that. It's funny as fuck. I'm really like.
Bro, come on, bro. What's going on here?
Honestly.
I put my receipts up. Let's see you guys.
Oh, I might get fight up.
Put up or shut up.
I
I can do a Boomer versus Zoomer with Smash Brothers. You know,
I feel like the game's got to be Tekken now. Josie, it might be the Tekken person here. And she maybe goes around and just starts kicking everybody out here.
I can do it with Smash. I can
We
do
can
it with
do
Smash.
that. Okay. That was fun. It's over on Josie's channel now. Actually, it was a good episode. Artwork turned out really good for. Yeah, there you go.
Very entertaining, very fun. Go watch the episode, guys. It was awesome.
Yeah, and let me know if you want to see more of those. That's actually a pretty fun idea for just all kinds of different games that come up.
We've got more in the works right now.
Oh.
Yeah, we're gonna do Mario Kart next.
Ooh,
That's
fun.
Okay. 64. Oh, I like
64, please. Yeah, let's do 64. Yeah.
You should do like best 2 out of 3, and you guys each pick the first 2. Like so, MVP picks
We should
N64,
switch
and then
Mario
Josie
Kart every
picks,
time, maybe.
then mash them all together, and then see who wins like 2 out of 3.
I'm actually really good at the SNES one.
Okay. All right. Wow, interesting. We have RGP here. Sean's here.
Hello.
Good to have Sean here. RPG.
RPG 85.
Yeah.
85. Somebody's got to do it around these parts.
Well, Sean's putting in that work on the game.
Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. You gonna play that?
I'm 15 hours in, pal.
Oh, okay.
He's playing it. Yeah, he's on it. He's going through some parts. I gotta be real. I thought he was about to toss the game a couple times. I went through a couple of those parts, and I'm like, there's no way. And Sean was like, you know what? I'm angry that I did it. So he's going through it. I gotta give him that. But there's a lot of very clashing and different opinions, I think, here for Rebirth. So that should actually be a pretty fun conversation for that one. Since actually everybody but you know what? I will say Josie did start up Remake. I did. I actually want to hear some of her quick thoughts on these very early parts of that. Huh?
On PS5?
Yeah.
Oh, you're getting the best version of the game right there.
Yeah, it looks really good. I pretty much just like got out of the factory, so I just only did that first part, but thought it was interesting. I don't know. I just might not be a super big RPG person, but I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna try to get through the whole thing. Mayhaps we'll see.
Okay.
But yeah, I didn't. I can see the appeal. I can really see it, and it's very pretty game.
Shout out to Johnny Disorder, coming a member over there.
Yo, Johnny D. What's good, baby? Shout out to him.
So with Rebirth, we also have the Sony and EA layoffs, which hit the industry pretty hard this week. A lot of stuff coming out of especially Sony, where they were shuttered the studio, and we even had Toys for Bob making announcements. So there's a lot of stuff just kind of in some shakeups around the industry. With the Pokemon Presents, there's again some very different opinions around that thing, I'm sure. And then Nintendo versus Yuzu, which I was kind of curious to get MVG's take on this, because I still think there's a video in the works from MVG. I've been asking about this, and if anything, maybe we can get some of his early thoughts here, because this is evolving pretty rapidly, actually, back and forth with some of the court documents, and I don't know, maybe emulation kind of being up in the air right now. Do some of the spotlighting.
I was waiting for that MVG video, so I'm guessing you're working with MVG on it, something painful, or...
I'm kind of waiting to see when the dust settles. So I was kind of waiting to see user respond, which they have, but I want to kind of basically see them, like, file their response type of thing. So I just want to wait a little bit and let the dust settle.
I'll say this, that Patreon money that they're getting, they're going to need it, man, because those corporate lawyers, ooh, boy, I'm going to tell something right now, you never want to have to hire a lawyer in your life. Because they will burn through your money. Man, bro, like a Kardashian, bro. I'm telling you, they out there. So, just never have to go to court and use a lawyer for anything, bro. So they're going to need that Patreon money.
V says, shout out to Nintendo YouTuber RPG85 for the wonderful Unicorn Overlord video. The True Atlas fan piece OJ, I think it's...
God damn, somebody just gifted 50 memberships.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
It is Arc Strike. I was saying the Arc Strike getting 50 Spawnwave members is very generous to the community out here. I'm not sure how that works exactly, if it's just kind of like randomly.
It's random, but you have to actually enable it in your settings. So if you haven't already got it enabled, you ain't going to get it.
Okay, well, we got...
And you have to be like sort of commenting in chat.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't want you working.
Yeah, you got to be a commenter and you got to have it enabled.
What can I go over here? Isn't there like a thing where you can click like, no, is that just on like the super chat stuff where you can give them hearts and stuff? We'll give Arc Strike, we got you. We're giving hearts and spirit.
Just super chats for that one. Just super chats.
Well, we're giving hearts and spirit there, Arc Strike. It's very very kind of you for the community here, since that means that just like 50 people just got memberships for. Look at that, there it is. Yeah, so people being gifted memberships for Arc Strike. Make sure everyone say a big thank you to Arc Strike for doing that. That's very, very kind.
Got emotes down, guys. You guys got emotes there. Use the emotes. They're in the stream.
Yeah, you can. You can do different emotes and all kinds of stuff. So shout out to Arc Strike. Shout out there. Let's welcome to Rookie X Play. Remember, and supporter. Shout out to Rookie X Play. So I got everybody here, right? Okay, good. I think last time I forgot Evan. So Evan's not here, but check out his channel. he's been putting in a lot of work on it. Let's see. We'll start with the Rebirth talk. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. We'll start with this. I do want to give them some credit here in general, because we're about to talk about the industry going through all kinds of hard times when it comes to game development, and they managed to get this game out in just under 4 years, about 3 years, 10 months. So that's what I'm seeing right now. That is fairly impressive. But it is out now. It did pretty well in terms of reviews, coming in with the 92, I think is what it's sitting at now. But Square Enix sent myself, Sean, MVG, and I feel like AJ as well.
Yeah, they reluctantly hold their hand in so you can have one to say. They got put near the Yoshi Beach, so they're like, okay, screw you. They reluctantly give me those now.
I'm just going to put that out there so everyone understands what it is.
Yes, I got to review those. Before they not anymore.
They activated ours at midnight when it came out. And it was immediate. Okay, now download 150 gigabytes worth of this game. But And sure enough, it didn't take as long as you hear that number, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna take a long time. It took like 30 minutes maybe to get there, so it's not bad. I saw people installing this thing from the disk. They're taking like an hour and 20 minutes or something. It's like, jeez. So we are to that point where some people download speeds are fast enough to where they easily are able to download even faster than installing it from a disk.
I did get this though.
Oh, I'm gonna get it I'm gonna get it physically as well. Just the fact that it comes on two Blu-rays and
Yeah, it's super nice. It's super nice. It's very, very nice.
but it is out now. I played 15 hours. Sean played actually about that too, I think, right? Sean, 15 hours. Yeah, MVG's out there too.
Yep, 15 hours ish.
15 hours, yeah.
10, about 10 plus hours for me. I'm doing like a lot of the side quests. So
Sure. So we had at least a grasp of the game, the core mechanics, that sort of thing, but it's 50-hour game apparently for just a casual playthrough and do platinum trophy apparently is 150 hours or something crazy. So I feel like we're still kind of scratching the surface on this one, but we definitely have some different opinions on this thing. So I will say I played through the demo and got the flashback sequence out of the way pretty quickly. Because you go to the part where you're following Tooth up the mountain and it just asks you to skip it. And then you got to fall through the fire and you're done. But Sean, you had to play through the game straight up. Like you already didn't do the demo. Correct. How did the opening 2 to 3 hours feel for you then?
Slow.
Okay, that's kind of what I was picturing. I'm like, if I do that flashback again and then stack it on top of some of this stuff, I would kind of feel like it's a bit of a crawl right now. I mean, it opened up quickly. See, that's the problem. Like the first 30 minutes, I feel like that's a spoiler for like who you take control of and what happens exactly there.
yeah,
But-
don't say that. 'Cause that's in the
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like that is that's
Don't
the
say
one
that.
you really can't throw out there.
Yeah.
So I beyond that though, flashback, Sean, you did all of this. It took a little while then to get there. But what was that? What was the moment of kind of walking out into the field like that? Was that? Would you describe that as an Oblivion, Skyrim, Fallout kind of moment? No, you really don't think so?
No. The area is nowhere. You can't just go anywhere and do anything. It's open-ended, but it's not like a real open world. Like you can't just walk to anywhere you want to go on the map or anything like that. It's a large open area, but it's not an open world because obviously as you play through the game, there's segments of stuff, so it's not just all one basic thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's semi-open, almost like maybe Xenoblade 1 at times, maybe a little bit less than that, or like Pokemon Legends, where there's like huge areas, and then sometimes you just can't access, you have to get back to like a certain spot. So yeah, it's not completely open at the very beginning at least. I think it opens up later. But
Yeah, I was playing Remake again recently, just to kind of get a feel for it again, and that game just feels so claustrophobic and closed off compared to this one. Like it's, and maybe that's why it felt a bit bigger than how you're describing, Sean, for me, because I was just playing that. And it felt like I'm always in a corridor somewhere, or I'm under roofs. There's like it's just walls around me constantly in that one. But here it's just there's a big field. I will say they do kind of buff up that map a little bit. You look at it and you zoom out, and it feels much larger than when you start running around. You're like, oh, it only took like 10 seconds to run up that mountain. Okay,
Yeah.
That wasn't that bad.
there's like a lot of like areas that are like surrounded by like water, and it's just water where it's just out there, right? It's like you can't really like go further beyond that point, and like the beginning area at least. But yeah, no, it's definitely it's nowhere near as claustrophobic like you said. Like that claustrophobia of being inside. Like, that's one of my things. I got a video tomorrow if you guys can watch it. No spoiler discussion about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but yeah, that's one of the things that I mentioned. Is like, well, it feels kind of like Remake feels definitely claustrophobic, So I feel you on that one, John. But, and Josie, I think you're probably maybe going through that a little bit right now. Remake.
Yeah, I don't know. I
She's
just gotta
trying.
play it more. I just gotta play it more. I don't want to say anything that makes people pissed off. I don't know.
Oh, you're not to say because Josie, you know what Josie's issue she mentioned with the remake is before before long was actually some of the combat at times.
Yeah, I just feel like it's not like the most complicated thing. It's not like Xenoblade, but it's like fairly complicated. I'd appreciate if they could just map it to a button, and I know that they probably can't for some of this stuff, but I don't know.
You don't like the
No,
freezing time and then picking a menu.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying at first. It can feel that way for sure, but once you get used to it, I think it really it makes it a bit easier. So I think they were trying to get like the original FF7 feel, and then also like an action RPG, so like a little bit of a hybrid. But yeah, I get it. Like you have to open up a menu, then like you see limit, and you see all these
yeah. Like
different
what does all this
menus,
stuff mean?
abilities.
Like, obviously, when I'm first playing it, it's like a little.
Yeah. It's a bit much, right? It's a
Yeah.
bit much, but you'll definitely as you go along, it'll become more. But it was a bit much for me too, and I play RPG all the time, so don't feel like, oh man, I'm this because like that. No, it's like that with a lot of people. Just like that.
Yeah, that's why I was like, I don't want to like be like, I don't really love the battle system, but like, it's just because I think I haven't gotten used to it yet. So eventually, maybe I get through it. We'll see.
You get through it. Well, you're through the opening part. It slows down a little bit. There are some times in Remake where it slows down pretty significantly, but there are some pretty high highs in that game. MVG, how you feeling right now about Rebirth? Just the overall structure of the game. Even we can get into some of the smaller bits and pieces, whether it's the side missions or the card game. But how do you feel about just at a bird's eye level?
Pretty happy with the game. I'm about 15 hours in chapter 7, as mentioned earlier. Overall, I think it's really good. It's a really good follow-up to the remake game. I like a lot of the exploration aspect of the game. I mean, it's definitely not open world. I think it's more like open zone or open something, right? But I do like the fact that you can run around these kind of large kind of areas and do different things and then kind of, move on to the next one. So I do like that aspect of it. But, I think, it's really what I was expecting, if that makes sense, that this game would be. There is a lot of story here. There is a lot of cutscenes. There is a lot of mini games. And I'm currently focused on the main quest line. But I think I'm going to start doing some more exploration and doing some side quests and stuff like that, because I know that there's certain summons that you can get only from completing certain things. So I am going to go back and focus on that a little more. Definitely a lot of game here. You said 150 hours to kind of platinum the whole thing. I mean, that sounds about right to me. But overall, very, very good. I think it's going to be one of the biggest games of this year, no doubt.
All right, Sean, hit us with it.
Paddington Bear should be the mascot. The game has padding, and John doesn't see it as padding, but every other human that I've talked to about this, basically just MVG, understands that there's some padding in the game, and that's not to say that like it's inherently bad, but it's obvious they're trying to stretch this out like really far, especially if you compare it to the base game, and that's okay. Some of the stuff will hit with people. I don't like card games, so there's a section of the game where they put a nice focus on it, and I'm like, no, thank you. I don't want to play a card game, but I appreciate it. It feels like some of the side things and some of the tasks you have to do in order to progress through the game just feel very drawn out and like just very ticky-tacky things. Like I'm not trying to spoil anything. And like some people might not notice it as much as other people. I definitely think the padding is different than it was in Remake, because that was kind of all just like in one area, whereas this is just like constantly kind of sprinkled in. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's a thing, and for some people